Hi, my name is Ryan Cordero, and for the Food Museum presentation, I have chosen the cheese uh, Kazu Marzu, also known as the maggot cheese. This cheese originates from the Sardinia island in Italy and can also be found on the Corsica island in France. The Sardinia island is where the cheese originated from, also where it got its name. Its name directly translates to rotten cheese in the local dialect. um, it's gonna be really hard to find this in really anywhere else other than the Sardinia island and the Corsica island, as it is illegal in most places. Um, it's illegal to manufacture it and to sell it. It's illegal in the United States, illegal in all of the European Union, and illegal in really almost everywhere. And you're really only going to find it in Italy and France because it's the only place where people know how to make it. This cheese isn't mass manufactured. It isn't made even in cheese shops. It's made by local artisans, small farmers who learn from their fathers and their mothers and learn whose fathers and mothers learn from their fathers and mothers. So this is really like a traditional cheese that you're not going to find anywhere else other than in Italy and France. The process of making this cheese is actually pretty simple. It just involves making a regular wheel of pecorino cheese. And once this cheese begins to mature, they slice off the top of it and allow a certain type of fly to lay their eggs within the cheese. Once these eggs hatch and the larvae begin eating the cheese, they begin to digest it and leave behind an excrement. And this excrement is actually what people eat. It allows the cheese to have a stronger and much more unique flavor. Now, once the maggots have eaten almost all the cheese, almost up to the rind, it's ready to be served. They mix it all up, and you might have it with bread and wine like you would with any other cheese. You're supposed to eat the maggots alive, and if at any point all the maggots have died, that means that the cheese is unsafe to eat and has become like toxic and poisonous and just unsafe to eat. The flavor of this is described as very strong. Um, it's very salty. It's kind of spicy, and it's pretty funky, as some cheeses are. Its smell is also described as very strong. Some describe it as kind of undesirable, but to each their own. Um, the texture of it is described as like soft and creamy, but like considering there are maggots in there, you can still feel the maggots in your mouth. And nutritionally, it's almost the same as any other cheese. It's very high in fat, very high in protein. Um, Whether you should eat this or not is up for debate. There are a lot of doctors who say that the risk of eating maggots, living maggots, is not worth it. And eating these can, if your stomach acid doesn't fully digest the maggots, like the maggots can cause lesions in your intestinal lining and in your stomach. So so a lot of doctors don't really recommend you eat this. Because this cheese is so hard to get your hands on, it's really only eaten on special occasions. And one of the reasons why it's so hard to get your hands on, along with it being illegal, is just because so few people know how to make it. It's made by these very traditional, farmers and local artisans who have specialized in this. Um, this has been learned from the generations before them, and they will teach it to the generations after them. So this makes it a very traditional and family style cheese, and it's something that hopefully will never die out as long as these people will continue on making it. I think there's a lot you can learn just by learning about someone else's food. I think there's really three main things. Firstly, is insight. I think you can gain a lot of insight from just learning about what somebody eats, especially when you look at a society and you look at their cuisine. You can see how your society and their society are very different or very similar. You can see what they grow on their farms. You can see what their children eat. You can see how they prep their meals. And just by learning about this, you can have a little view into how they live and what their lives look like. Um, and I think just by learning about how another society lives, you can look at your own society and see that yours might be a little bit weird, like to them as well. And you can start to see that your society and their society, while being very different, are very similar in the ways that we both eat food, and the both of us eat food that we can make just off of the food that's around us. And I think that goes to show the ingenuity of the human race in that we can create food from anything that's around us, and we will find a way. And I think in that you can realize that humans are really all the same, even though what we eat is so different. We're all doing very human things, such as eating and making food. Now the next thing I want to focus on is the discovery. Now, just by learning about someone else's food, you can learn about new foods that you want to try, and maybe one of the foods that you try just becomes your new favorite thing. You could see, for example, if you see this cheese and you think, wow, it looks interesting, I want to try that. And you try it, and it might become like your most favorite food that you would just want to show everybody. Now, you would have never had that opportunity if you didn't take the chance to learn about the food with an open mind and without having judgment. And this lack of judgment, I think, rolls into the last thing I want to talk about, which is acceptance. Now, just by learning about a lot of food, you can begin to accept that even though your food is not the same as someone else's, it doesn't make it any less valuable. Um, and I think just by having acceptance when you're looking at food, it becomes less of a conversation like, oh my God, that food looks gross, and more of a, wow, that food looks interesting. And if you walk into it with that frame of mind, you're more able to try new things and maybe learn to love it. But even if you don't, it doesn't mean that that food is not food. It's still food for somebody, but maybe not for you. And I think with all of these things, we can learn to, you know, just love one another more. Just by learning about other people's food, it's a very weird like side effect, I guess. But just by learning about other people's foods and other people's societies, we can we can learn just to love one another. I would change the name of the museum from the Disgusting Food Museum to the Exotic Foods You've Never Tried exhibit. I think this name encourages more education and open mindedness. I think if you call something disgusting, when people walk in, they're automatically predisposed to thinking what they're about to see is about to be gross. Versus you call it something exotic, I think when people walk in, they're going to have much more interest and an open mind about what they're seeing, and they might not think it's gross when they first look at it. But like by calling something gross from the jump, it causes people to automatically have this little judgment about what they're about to see. And I think also this name is much more inclusive and less judgmental. I think a problem with this museum is that this museum is showcasing foods from other places, and they're presenting it as something to be like disgusted at versus something to be proud of. I think a lot of these places in which like they're kind of like taking these foods from and showing them off. Um, let's say I'm from Italy. I'm from the island in which this cheese is being made, and I love this cheese, and it's being shown off to people, and all I'm hearing is it's disgusting, it's gross, it's being shown because it is disgusting. Versus if I heard that this place was showing off my favorite food because they thought it was interesting and cool, I would be a lot more proud of the food that I eat and the place that I'm from versus feeling kind of ashamed about where I come from and my society, like my family and my heritage. And I think like by changing this name and presenting each food as an interesting look into another life, another society, I think can be a lot more helpful for the growth of humanity versus the, the harshness of this museum and in the insulting like nature of it. And here are the sources I used. And thank you so much for watching. All right.